In this presentation, we'll be going over uh, raceways and other types of electrical wiring and the fittings that is used for raceways. So this is section 2 of module 8. The objectives of this section is talking about fasteners and anchors, but how to select and install um, tie wraps. And tie wraps are just wire ties. Usually some type of synthetic or plastic straps that will secure wires together, selecting, installing screws, selecting uh, hammer-driven pins for supports, identifying the safety requirements for stud-type guns, uh, selecting and installing the mason anchors, which is a really big part of the, the start of any job, such as selecting and installing hollow wall anchors and selection of epoxy anchor systems. All these are different types of uh, attaching um, electrical systems together. There is a performance test part of this, and the first thing we will do is identifying and selecting various types of sizes of raceways, fittings, fasteners for a given application. We will demonstrate how to install a raceway system and also to terminate a selected raceway system. Wire ties, everyone pretty much know what wire ties are. They're straps. If you ever seen cops when they arresting a group of people, they use these larger wire ties to hold the hands together to secure them. But the main purpose of it is to hold wires together. So many types of fasteners are used to attach conduit to building structures. And usually if it's like thermostat wires or bundles of wires, uh, that fits into trays, they would strap them together. And matter of fact, in control panels, these are really common to keep wires together. Instead of having just loose wires hanging in all directions, they kind of bundle them together to strap them. So wire ties can be color coded to help it to identify certain bundles. The most common is white or black, but they do come in uh, colors. The standard type of wire ties, once you tighten it down, it doesn't come loose. You have to cut it loose. But they do make a releasable type of wire ties that where you can press it in and you'll be able to remove it. And that center one, let me just point it out. This one here has an eyelet. So if you need to secure um, a wire tie and a bundle of wires, you can use a screw to go through this opening to attach it to a wall or to inside of a case. So again, there's many different types. The one here is that you can use a Sharpie, a marker, to write on it so it can help identify the use of that bundle. There's all types of bolts and screws are used for electrical and attaching things together. And a couple of things to keep in mind. A bolt, this is a hex head, meaning that it has a flat sides to it, 6 sides. And but the threads is based on the number of threads per inch. Again, they make fine threads, coarse threads, and threads that is based on um, again what it's used for. Now, the the bolt itself comes in different varieties based on its what you're going to be tightening down. So it could be hardened steel that can be tightened down very tight, or it can be made out of mild steel, which is not very strong, which can bend, it can fall out of place if it put too much tension on it. So screws are made of various sizes, shapes, head sizes. Again, head sizes, there's many different types. There's hex heads, there's pan heads, there's let's say uh, Torx type heads. but always use a screwdriver or a power driver with the proper tip to match the screw being driven. So in other words, if it's a hex head, use not a pair of pliers, but you use like a socket wrench or a box end wrench to tighten it up. If it's a flathead or a Phillip, you would use that, but the right size. Even Phillips comes in multiple sizes. It could be a number one, number two, or number three Phillip. And using the wrong screwdriver can damage the screw head. Wood screws are used to fasten electrical boxes or panels to wooden frame members like studs or joists or plywood. So choose a screw that's long enough so that at least 2/3 of the screw length will enter the wood member to give it strength. The other third is just whatever, if you got washers and things in the thickness of the panel, what that be used for. Again, if it's attaching any member, that goes with even concrete anchors, it need to go completely into the concrete. These are other type of screws. These are lag screws. Lag screws are basically like wood screws. They can make them to go into anchors too. The anchors are soft materials, usually like a lead shot that can take that lag boat. Lag boats are usually very long, and they're designed to go through multiple layers of wood. Um, in other words, lag boats, if you're going into a structure such as like a joist or joists, they come in various lengths. So they can be 3 inches, 4 inches, 6 inches, 8 inches. So again, depending on what you need to go through. So lag screws and shields are used in applications that require greater holding power. So here's a really good example. A lag screw can be used to attach a deck to the house. Um, in other words, that lag screw would go through the deck joists and then the ledger board that's attached to the house. Um, so again, for greater holding power. And usually you use lag screws. They would use washers to to um, to give a little more strength to. So the length of the lag screw should equal the thickness of the component to be fastened plus the length of the lag shield. Concrete masonry screws, they make special screws. It could be Phillip heads or it could be hex heads. It's made out of hardened steel, and the threads on it is designed to dig into the concrete. However, you need to drill a hole first. You cannot just drill right into concrete with these. So the masonry drill bit, will be used to drill the hole into the wall, and that hole would be slightly smaller than the screw itself. So it has something to bite into. So again, they use to drill it out. They would use a hammer drill to drill the hole, and then they use these hardened screws to go into um, up into the concrete. So again, usually they use for walls. You can do floors too, but they do make special anchors for going into floors. Thread forming screws eliminate the need to tap a hole before installing a screw. These are usually for sheet metal. It will actually start it, drill into um, the metal, like a metal panel, and it will tighten it. So the self-drilling are really common because it's the drill tip. Actually, it will do a very, matter of fact, a great job of starting a hole. And once it goes through, it would just take it. And if you notice with that self-tapping, it bites into the panel to keep it from bagging out. So these are very common. They're kind of expensive because they drill tips. Each one of these have to be formed correctly to bite into metal. These are standard threaded forming screws. It just have a pointed edge at the end. Uh, However, if it's heavy, um, let's say gauge metal, sheet metal, it's not the best thing to use. That's when we use the drill tips. Other thread forming screws, cutting screw, uh, they're used, if you notice that the tip of it help, if you got a small hole, it will um, drill into it and cut and make the hole bigger to tighten it into to set that screw. So thread cutting screws can be used to join metal components that are softer than the hardened steel of the screw. So mild steel panels, sheet metal, is really common for these type. There's drywall screws. We certainly attach things like boxes to drywall and things. However, it'd be better if you can go into through the drywall, but hit a stud, a wood or a metal structure to go into. So they do make special threads that if you're using metal studs to be able to dig into it and to bite into it, the fine threads are usually going to drywall, to going to metal studs, and the coarse threads are designed to go into wood members. Alrighty, we come to uh, hammer drills and setting anchors. They make anchors for all different types of applications. So in other words, they make special anchors going to concrete floors. They make anchors to go into concrete walls. They make anchors to go into concrete ceilings. And in commercial buildings, it is very common to have a concrete ceiling. In other words, the floor above you may have a metal decking below it, but they pour concrete on top of it. And so you need to drill into it. You need to drill through the metal decking first and then into the concrete. So they make special drill bits that can burn through both of those, go through the metal and the concrete. So these hammer-driven pins, first you need to draw a hole into the concrete, and then use a setting tool to drive that pin into in to whiten the base of it so it become a permanent part of the concrete once you hammer it in because it would be a very tight fit. So they make again many different types. There's uh, type of anchors that have a pin that is already part of the anchor, but typically um, they have something that with a tool that you would use to set the anchor because the opening may have threads, so you can actually use threaded rods or bolts or something to drive it into it, the anchor. So they do make anchors that have threads on the inside of it, but they use a special tool to set it. Now these are different types of anchors, and just point some of these out. Number one, these are shots, usually like 22 caliber, uh, basically blanks that you would find for one of those blank guns. But these shots are designed to shoot one of these anchors into concrete. So it's like a bullet. And so as we use these types, they has a little rubber piece on the side of it, and this is hardened steel that would be driven into the concrete, either the floor or the walls. Um, these types would have um, would have threads on it. So if you need to attach something, this would have been driven in, but this portion will not go completely into the um, the uh, the walls or the floors, and you use these to put a nut to for either like unistrut or some type of channel to go into a wall or angle iron. But using this installation tool, the installation tool is designed to be used to set these anchors. You put the shot in. These are different types. This like a revolver. You hit one to go to the next one. Uh, this is a straight one. You put the loads in and it just move it through as you keep going. And these are single shots. You have to load it one at a time into each one of the ones. So basically, it's just using a gun. There's our safety, so you cannot shoot this without pressing this uh, um, the end into the concrete, to press it into the concrete before it can be released. So basically, that is the safety. So masonry anchors, they come in all different varieties. Let's take a look at this. Is a wedge type. If you notice, this one has this beveled edge. This is basically a shot at the bottom, and it's wedged into this the anchor. This portion of it is threaded at the top. You've noticed there's a nut on it. And this is the part that will be outside of the concrete. So when you drill the hole, the distance you drill it would be the length of this portion here. They would use a special setting tool to hammer this into the concrete. So basically this wedge get wedged farther by using a hammer to compress it, to expand it so it's in the wall. This is another type of stud, a wedge anchored in. This one here, basically, you hammer it in, wedge it in, and uh, this is the nut for it. All these basically the same. This one is for wood. Uh, Basically, you use a socket wrench. You drill a hole, use a socket wrench, and screw this in. It's almost like a lag screw. This is a lead shot. This bottom portion is lead, and it will whiten up, but you would actually hammer this nail into it. So basically, how this works, if let's say you got a plate or a channel, you uh, you would drill the hole first, slide this through the channel, attach it to the hole you just drill, then you hammer this in, and it will open it up and expand it to secure it. This basically works similar to this screws in. So uh, many different types of masonry anchors. And in construction and commercial, industrial type of electrical work, we use these type anchors all the time. So you got to get familiar with these anchors. Boat anchors, using bolts. So these are special anchors that is used to go into concrete, and it has threads on the inside of it. So it has female threads where you will screw a bolt into these. These are very common too. Basically, these are hammered in or using some type of setting tool to get it to set in place. These are extremely strong, believe it or not. You could hang them upside down. You don't have to worry about something falling because once you set them correctly, they don't come out. The problem is if you don't set it correctly, uh, things may come tumbling down. So it has to be solid. So the drill bit that you use is extremely important. Making sure you're using the right size and the depth you're setting it. These are um, light duty anchors to go in drywall. They're not designed to take a lot of stress. But if you're just going to set something like you're going to put a thermostat on the wall or something lightweight, a panel that you need to put on the wall, or even just a light fixture, just a basic light fixture like in a bathroom. It doesn't have a lot of weight to it. These anchors can be used. But anything that structurally has some weight to it or has some movement to it, you need to put stronger type of anchors in. Okay, self-drilling anchors. These are pretty cool. They use a special tool. It's a hammer drill. Matter of fact, it's not just a hammer drill, it's a rotary hammer drill. And uh, this here is the anchor, and at the bottom of it, there's some type of like I said, jagged edge that actually bite into. So when you drill this thing in, it actually put the hole in, blow out the all the dust and cutting materials, and it kind of speeds the job up. And so you can set it once you bottom it out, you can set it in place. This is a basic type of anchor. Step one, you drill the hole. You can see the bracket, L bracket there. You set the anchor, and if you notice, there's a hammer. They would beat it in place. That's why the hole has to be the proper depth. So use some type of gauge to make sure to ensure that it is at the right depth. And then once you hammer it in place, you could tighten it down. It will draw it together and it will tighten to make sure it's set. Here's another type of, we call them toggle boats. Toggle boats, or sometimes they call them butterfly anchors, but hollow wall anchors. In other words, you're going through drywall. There's nothing, no structure to hold it together. Basically, you're screwing it to the drywall. And it's certainly stronger than those plastic bolts. But if you got a lot of weight, you don't want to typically use these. Putting a shelf on a wall, we use them all the time. Again, hollow wall anchors are used in hollow materials such as wallboard or plaster or block or structural steel. Um, Toggle bolts are used in a pre-drill. So in other words, you drill a hole, and the hole's got to be pretty large because that anchor has to go through it. This anchor here actually folds back, but the hole has to be larger than the bolt. And so you drill the hole large enough to get this anchor through, fold it down. So these do fold down. And then once you get it into the wall, it opens back up. It's spring loaded. It will open up. And then, of course, the hole is pretty large. So you have to use washers with these types of bolts. They make different types. They make plastic ones. As a matter of fact, they have some really cool ones, plastic ones they make that you can close it up. And then once you get it through the wall, you pull something back and it actually opens up again and it breaks off the the part that you was using to set it in place. Um, so there's again many different types. These are different type of heads. You can find round heads, pan heads, button heads, beveled. These are recessed that if used in some type of recess or chamfered edges that it would go into. More type of anchors. Um, this one here, wallboard or drywall works good. A lot of times they metal or they can be plastic. They pre-drill into the drywall, and once you get through, it comes and set in place. These are uh, designed for drywall also. It comes with a screw that you're going to be using attaching it. So once you drill a hole, you slide this into the wall, use a screw to tighten it up, and it actually opened up to be like a butterfly, uh, almost like a toggle. So again, these again other types of anchors that's used, but uh, many of these can be used for open wall um, anchors too. Epoxy anchors. These are special anchors that have epoxy. And epoxy is like a glue. but it is extremely strong. Uh, so epoxy anchor systems uses a two-part epoxy. So it's a resin and there's a hardener. Those are the two parts, the resin and hardener. When they are mixed together, it hardens pretty fast and it becomes extremely strong. So epoxies is a very strong glue. Um, so um, once you break and mixes it together, it becomes um, stronger than sometimes the materials that you screwing it to. Uh, so, so to he said to use these anchors, a pre-drilled hole is there. It's cleaned out from all um, the drilling materials, the concrete that got broken up. Um, you would fill halfway with epoxy. And a lot of times the epoxy might be in a tube you squeeze together and squeeze into it. And then you insert your anchor inside of it and it's set in place to make it balance. And it will, again, just give it time to set. So most epoxies, depending on at least 24 hours, but there are some fast drying epoxies that within 5 minutes can harden up. So again, epoxies are really big part of these type of anchors. They're strong, um, but again, depends what you're using it for. All these anchors are designed for certain things. Um, of course, the epoxy you got to give it time for cure before you can start using it. Questions. First one is that tie wraps that will be used for outdoors must be, and it makes sense, UV resistance. Usually the white ones, the wire ties, are not UV. The black ones are typically are UV. They make other ones too, but um, again, make sure if you're going to be used outdoors, make sure the UV because the ultraviolet light will break down the plastic and it end up giving away, giving way. Question two. Which of the following is true regarding screw gauges and shank? All right, let's go through each one of these. It said the lower the gauge number, the larger the diameter of the shank. The lower the gauge number, the longer the length of the shank. Let's start with the first one. The lower the gauge number, the larger the diameter of the shank. Now, that is incorrect. For wire, that is true. Um, so, but for um, screws, no. B says the lower the gauge number, the longer the length. It has nothing. So, in other words, the gauge is talking about the thickness of the bolt or screw, not the length. That would be another number. So, we give you the gauge as one of the numbers you look for like a number 10 screw or bolt, and then it will give you the length. The other things you look for is the type of the head. Is it hex headed? Is a pan head? Is it a Phillip? Is it a flat? Is it a Torx? So there's multiple things you look for when you're choosing. C says the higher the gauge, the larger the diameter of the shank. That is true. That is true. So the larger the number, the thicker that of that shank. Of course, D says the higher the gauge number, the longer the length of the shank. That is incorrect. Number three, it says when installing hammer-driven pins and studs, blank. Okay, A says the pre-drill hole should be slightly smaller than the pin or stud. That is incorrect because you would never be able to get it inside of, get that anchor inside of the hole. So it should be as tight as possible without a lot of play, but being able to get it in. B says the pre-drill hole should be the same size as the pin or stud, and it can be, if it is, it would, again, you need space for it to expand. C says the pre-drill hole should be slightly larger than the pin. Then D says a pre-drill hole is not required. Now remember, I gave you some examples of different type of anchors as I was giving the answers, but a, uh, a hammer-driven pins and studs, it doesn't need it because um, the end of the stud is actually cut out and it will actually drill into the concrete itself. So the answer is pre-drilled holes is not required. It is not required. So just go through, take a look at the different types. Majority of anchors need to have a pre-drill, but the hammer-driven pins and studs do not need it. Do not need it. When using a powder, or actually the gunshot or the blanks, using the powder activated tool, blank. First one says A, post warning signs within 50 feet of use. B says power level 12 is the lowest. C says color codes are often used to indicate the manufacturer. That's certainly not correct. And D, all loads are interchangeable among makes and models. That is not true. Different manufacturers make it different. Some do use something that is common, such as a 22 shot, but some manufacturers makes it different based on their tool. So uh, it is A, post warning signs within 50 feet. Here's the reason why, to make sure that if there's a failure any type of way, matter of fact, when those go off, it sounds like a gun going off. So again, you don't want to have something splattering, or there could be a problem. So post warning signs. Question number 5. A type of fastener that uses the anchor itself as a drill bit is a blank. I read it again. A type of fastener that uses the anchor itself is a drill bit, as a drill bit, I'm sorry, is a, well, we just kind of went through that on the last question. So it's not a wedge anchor because you need to drill a hole. It's not a stud anchor because you need to drill a hole. It's not a one-piece anchor. It would be the self-drilling anchor. D would be the correct answer. Number 6, a type of fastener with spring-loaded wings is a blank. Um, remember I said like the butterfly, it opens up, it folds back, and opens up. That would be a toggle bolt, a toggle bolt. Toggle bolts are spring-loaded, and you close it up to push it through the hole through the wall. And as soon as here's another thing to keep in mind with toggle bolts. The bolt you're using is pretty long. It's longer than you really need it because it has to be, as you take that toggle bolt through the wall, the screw has to be long enough to push that toggle bolt all the way through, and then you have to pull it back. So you will have a lot of extension once you pull it back against the wall. You have to tighten it up. And so the bolt is longer than you really need it to be. Number 7, epoxy anchoring systems are commonly used to anchor fasteners. And what? Um, is it wood? You don't need it for wood because you could use a wood screw for that, a wood anchor. Wall boards? No, because there's usually wall boards. There's a gaping hole in the wall. The space of the studs, that 3.5 inches of wall space, it's just there. So it would just run down the wall. So it's not plaster because they use special type of anchors for that. It would be brick. So brick anchors. So in other words, with bricks, you can use epoxy type anchors to secure it. There's many other type of anchors you can use for bricks too, but the common to use the epoxy type.